buy 2 of these things. Let's just get this checked out.
So in this video, I'm gonna build a home for them, show off everything about keeping a pet leech, and literally let them suck on my arm. Yes, I am not kidding. I'm gonna let them do that, and I might get some unknown deadly virus. This is easily gonna be my weirdest pet. Anyways, until the leeches got delivered, I got out a 20-gallon aquarium and a ton of rocks to get its enclosure built. Step 1 to make its home is to make a rock arch. To do that, I got out some water-safe spray foam and sprayed the entire left side of the enclosure, and then I covered it with some lava rocks. You see, leeches spend most of their time in the water, but they actually have the ability to crawl on land like a worm. And basically, by connecting all these rocks with foam, I was able to build an arch here that I could cover with dirt to make the land portion of this enclosure. On the land, I put some very simple decorations like a piece of wood, some carpet moss, and a small plant to complete it.
Alright, the land area is looking pretty nice and small and cozy, and it's gonna be so cool to see the leeches swim onto the land so they can eat food and stuff. Oh, and also, if you're wondering where I got this beautiful plant, it's of course from Walmart. Gotta keep the channel's tradition going, you know.
Anyway, step 2 of this enclosure is to create the water portion. Now, I started by getting out some of this black aqua soil stuff and putting a layer of it down because it'll allow us to grow some beautiful, luscious plants in here. But first, I covered the soil with a layer of sand and started to scatter giant river rocks along the bottom. I figured it'd be cool to make this place look like the bottom of a river, since that's where leeches live in the wild. To finish the river look in here, I put some smaller river rocks around, and then I put some extra small tiny river rocks around, and then I put some extra tiny small river rocks around, which aren't really rocks anymore, they're just kind of like gravel, but yeah. Anyways, now it's time for the aquatic plants. When I got home, I used my artistic skills to find the most optimal locations to plant each plant, and by that I mean I just put them around randomly, but after putting them all in, it actually looked pretty cool.
Alright, dang, this is actually gonna look pretty good once I add water in here. And also, it turned out really good how that rock arch makes like a little cave there. That's gonna be really cool. I guess the leeches are gonna be able to swim there or something.
Anyways, leeches are freshwater creatures, so I just filled the enclosure up with some normal water, you know, pretty simple stuff, and in no time it was done.
Alright, I'm liking the look of this a lot, but if you look at the dirt, it's absorbed the water and it's super moist and it kind of looks like mud right now. Now, because the humidity's so high right here, mold can actually grow, which is of course not good for the leeches. But don't worry, because I have the perfect solution right here.
Inside of this container, I had some little insect creatures delivered to me for step number 3, the mold cleanup crew. These are springtails, which you may have seen before, but I have a cool idea for them this time. They're basically just super tiny white insects that I guess eat mold when it grows in here. And yeah, there's tons of these things in here, so I just dumped the whole container on the land.
Alright, I think it'd be really cool to get a time lapse of these little guys eating, and since there's no mold in here right now, apparently their second favorite food is yeast, which is like a fungus or something. I don't really know. You use it to bake bread. But basically, I'm just gonna sprinkle a little bit right here, and we'll see what they do. I don't even know if this is gonna work.
So I waited for the springtails to absolutely devour the yeast up, and they were all kind of gathering up around it, looking like they were probably eating it. And as you can see, this part of the yeast kind of changed. I don't know if that's just because it soaked up the water from the dirt or what. I guess I only record the springtails for like 30 minutes, so it's not a very eventful time lapse, but this is what it looked like at the end. Now for step number 4 of completing this enclosure, we gotta put some technology in here like always to make it super good. Now first of all, I got out this machine, which you may have seen in some of my previous videos. Basically, when I turn this little dial, out of the end of the tube, a bunch of fog comes out. So I set that up on the side of the glass and let it run for a minute.
Dang, check this out. It completely transforms it from being kind of boring to like super spooky. And honestly, it's a little bit too much fog. Let me get some of this out of here. Okay, that's better. But you know, it's cool. Adds to the atmosphere. Leeches are pretty spooky, and you know, I'm gonna be letting it suck on my arm. It's not gonna be fun.
Anyways, for the second technology, well, this one's a little useless, but it's cool.
Okay, so I was walking around Target earlier and saw these little robot turtle toys on sale for about like $8. And I think it'll just be funny to put these in the water with the leech, you know, once we add them in. But let's just test them out real quick to see what they look like. Okay, I got it. And I think you just like press these buttons and oh, okay, its arms are moving. I guess let me just put it in the water. Let's see what this thing can do. And, oh, it's moving. And it's just swimming into the glass. Okay, I guess it's kind of cool. Okay, it's not that cool to be honest. Well, let me put it on land. Let's see if it can walk on land. And, yeah, okay, I can't walk on land.
Well, this enclosure is now 100% complete and ready for probably the weirdest pet I have ever got to be put inside, the leeches. So I guess just cut to when I get that package.
Alright, supposedly in this box are the leeches. I just got them shipped. I still can't believe we're gonna be keeping these as pets, and I'm literally gonna be letting it suck on my arm. This is not gonna be fun at all, but it's gonna be pretty entertaining. But hey, let's just go get these guys in their enclosure. We don't want them in their, shipping box anymore. Let's go.
So I brought the box inside and opened it up.
Oh nah, bro. The leeches are inside this little foam box. I do not even want to open this up.
Inside the box was a little plastic container with water and the leeches, which I moved into this bigger container of water. And well, here they are, my new pet. Aren't they so cute?
Oh, are you seeing this? This is so disgusting. This guy's just climbing up the side of the enclosure. They're already trying to escape.
But despite how nasty they were, I had to transport them to their new home, so I tried to scoop them out.
Okay, I got one of them up against the wall in this little container, and I'm just gonna try and scoop it up. Oh, there we go. Oh, shoot, it's not going good. Oh, no, is this thing trying to escape right now? No, this is not the time. Can you please go back in the container? Oh my gosh, it's just on my table.
But eventually I got it back in, and I was able to put both the leeches into their new home. And right after dropping them in, it didn't take long for the leeches to start swimming around and be super active. Basically, how leeches work is they mostly get around by swimming around just like this, like how a sea snake would. But on one end of their body, they actually have a little suction cup so that they can grab onto walls and rocks so they can stay still. And of course, on the other end of their body is the mouth that they use to, of course, grab onto animals with. Anyways, let's go get these mantises fed.
Now, as you can see, I've got 4 different tiers of food that get harder and harder to hunt. So let's start by first letting the little pink mantis go. There you go, boy. Come on. You gonna climb on? Hello?
Now, for the first food source for this guy, I'm gonna be using literally the smallest animal they sold at the pet store. Extra small crickets, which is the size I never get for my videos because, I mean, look at them. They're like even smaller than my fingernail. But anyways, let's put these inside the enclosure. Right away, one of the crickets started to climb along a flower. And I don't blame you if you couldn't see the mantis here because it's in its prime camouflage territory. If us humans have trouble seeing a mantis like this, I can say for a fact that this cricket definitely couldn't see it, and it made a grave mistake of walking too close. The mantis quickly struck at the cricket, but missed. But the mantis wasn't gonna let that stop him. So the next time the cricket came around, he charged up an attack and jumped off the leaf. Yeah, and that kind of just kept happening over and over. I guess they're scared of extra small crickets or something.
Yeah, the mantis couldn't even get a hold of these. I'm giving extra small crickets a 1 out of 10. But for the next pink flower mantis, I'm gonna be testing with him the next size up of crickets. We got some medium crickets. Let's see how these do in the enclosure.
So I went and dumped some of the crickets in and then put the pink flower mantis in. And right away, I noticed that maybe I had put too many crickets in because the mantis was getting absolutely surrounded by them. In fact, he actually looked pretty scared and was trying to just stand still to blend in and not get seen by the crickets. And the entire 45 minutes of watching him in this enclosure, I didn't see him strike a single cricket.
Well, I guess just any crickets are not a food source that baby mantises like. So these get a 0 out of 10. Get this trash out of here. However, this next mantis is a bit bigger, and I'm 100% confident he's gonna eat the next food source. Let's go and put him in the enclosure. There you go, boy.
Now for this guy, I'll be feeding him some dubia roaches. They're fast and hard to catch, but they're very nutritious. The mantis ended up walking onto this plastic lid that I had put in the enclosure, so I ended up just putting the roaches on that. And literally instantly, the mantis noticed them and turned on his predator mode. Right away, he struck at them and missed. But he wasn't gonna let that stop him because then he struck again, and this time he got a perfect hold of the roach. Using their sharp claws, they basically hold the prey in place and lock them so they can't get out no matter what. Then with its alien mouth, it sucks the juices out of the roach while it's still alive. Yeah, it's extremely brutal, and the whole time the roach was just squirming its little antennas around, but there was nothing it could do.
There we go. That's what a mantis is supposed to do. So I think I'm gonna give the roaches 8 out of 10. And that's because I still think there's room for improvement with this black mantis because I have one more prey I want to try and feed them. So I'm just gonna go and let this guy loose in the enclosure.
For this guy, I'll be feeding him flightless fruit flies, which is the tiniest of all the preys I've had, meaning it's probably the hardest to catch. But I've also heard mantises love flies, so let's see. Now it turns out that doing that burnt wood for this enclosure was actually a good idea because the mantis was just chilling on one of the sticks waiting for a fly to walk by. And after leaving him alone for a minute, I actually came back to a flightless fruit fly in his hand. It's a pretty cool shot to see the black mantis on the black stick eating a black fly contrasted with that white background. But I did kind of want to see him strike one of the flies, so I ended up putting him on a white lid and put a fly right up to his face. Right away, he struck at it, and yeah, he started eating this one too. Even though mantises are just some simple little insects, I think they have one of the coolest eating processes out of any animal. And yeah, even though all 4 of my mantises are still really small right now, they should grow up over the coming months and be way bigger soon. So I have a feeling they're gonna make a great addition to my pet.
What could go wrong? Let's just buy this at the cart.
So in this video, I'm gonna build it at home, show off everything about keeping a pet cow killer, which means yes, I am going to let it crawl on my arm. If it stings me, I am going to be in. So I got out the enclosure and a bunch of desert rocks to build its home. To start, I stacked each of the rocks in this pattern that would create a canyon look in here.
Now the reason I bought these types of rocks is because they look like the rocks in real canyons. But yeah, because they look so realistic, these rocks were very expensive. Yes, that's actually how much they costed. We don't talk about that.
You see, cow killers live in deserts in the wild, which sort of makes sense because all of the most deadly and painful animals live in the desert. Anyways, to finish the canyon look in this enclosure, I got some of this excavator sand stuff.
You see, if I add this bowl of water to this tub of the sand and, you know, pour it in there like that, then just go and mix it up with my hand. And after a minute, it turns it into this clay substrate, which I can kind of make into a nice ball of, poop. Yes, it's kind of nasty. But basically, using this clay, I'm gonna go and stick it in between each of these rocks to kind of glue them together, and we're gonna have a nice completed canyon look in here.
Anyways, after putting that all over the rocks and letting it dry, it ended up looking pretty good. But the next step to finishing this desert is, of course, to put some sand in here. Because, you know, deserts, they have to have sand.
But before putting the sand in, first I've got these big bags of black rocks. And apparently if I scatter this around the floor before putting the sand in, it should help absorb any extra moisture, and that'll prevent any mold from growing in this desert.
Next up, I got out another container and filled it with some sand and some of this soil to make the desert substrate.
Basically, the reason why I'm using this as the substrate is because when I put the plants and cactuses inside, this soil is going to provide a lot of nutrients, so they're able to grow nice and tall, and we get a fully fledged desert in here.
So I went and poured that on top of all of the carbon and pushed it up against the rocks to make the desert floor. But as you can see, this doesn't really look like a desert because of how much dirt I added to that substrate. So I quickly poured a thin layer of just normal sand on top so it would look like a desert once again.
Alright, this is already starting to look like a good cow killer enclosure, but to make it even better, it's time to add in some plants and decorations.
First, for the decorations, and that basically just means wood and rocks, because that's pretty much all deserts have, to be honest. They're pretty boring. First of all, I put some of this spider wood around the tank randomly and even used some of it to make little bridges across the canyons that the cow killer would be able to walk on. Then I got some of these longer sticks and put them on the side of the canyon to make it look like there were roots growing from it or something. Yeah, pretty cool.
But I did end up getting 2 cool decorations, which are right here. The first of which is these little logs, which are called choya wood. And the reason these are a cool decoration is because choya, it's a cool word to say, I'm not gonna lie. Oh, and also they're good because they have all these little holes so the cow killer can run inside and then just hide and make a home in there. So yeah, that's good. And for the second cool decoration, I got a live scorpion. I'm just kidding. It's actually not a live scorpion. Oh, it's a plastic toy scorpion, but you know, it's a desert, so I think it'll fit pretty well. I'm just gonna put it right in this empty spot there. Take a look at that. Looks pretty deserty.
Now for the plants, and as you know, not many things can live in the deserts since it's so dry, so our only options are succulents and cacti, which of course are able to absorb tons of water.
But I don't have any of those types of plants. I don't know how to say it plural.
So I picked out a nice selection, and while I didn't get as good of a deal as that comment said, it still only costed like $20 for all these plants, which is pretty good. Anyways, to plant these desert plants, I shook off all the excess dirt and planted just the roots in the sand. And in no time, it was done. But the final step to finishing the cow killer's home is insects. And I've got 2 different species of insects I want to put in here. First of all, you already know, I've got springtails, the extremely tiny white creepy bug things. And yeah, there's just like 1,000 of them in here. All these tiny little white things moving. Those are all springtails.
But these are extra important in a desert enclosure like this, because every now and then I'm gonna have to go and spray each of the plants down and water them, and the springtails will make sure to eat up any extra mold that grows because of all the moisture. So yeah, they're pretty useful. Let's just dump these guys in here. Yeah, pretty good.
And second of all, I've got these things, which are mealworms.
But the real reason why I'm gonna put these guys in the enclosure is because I'm kind of interested to see if the cow killer's gonna go and just sting them, to be honest. I don't really know if the cow killer eats insects like this, but I guess I'm gonna figure out with you guys once we put them in here.
Well, this desert enclosure is now complete. So I cut the tape and got the container out that supposedly the bug was inside.
Okay, so this is not so promising. It's just a clear plastic container with a paper towel. Well, I guess let me just carefully take the lid off and, okay, please, hopefully nothing jumps out at me.
I very carefully used some tweezers to move the paper towel into another container. And then I carefully moved around that paper towel to try and reveal the cow killer.
Oh, I think I see it in there. Wait, do you see that? Hold on, look at this. Oh, that's the cow killer. This may not look like it, but this thing right here is one of the most painful stinging insects, or not even insects, just animals in the entire world.
But I couldn't just move it straight inside of the new enclosure because first I had to build the rest of it on so it wouldn't be able to escape. Because if it did, that would be really bad.
Okay, well, it's right here, so I'm just gonna risk it for the biscuit and pick it up super carefully. And drop it. Okay, you're in your new home. Enjoy it.
Soon enough, the bug crawled out of its paper towel and started to explore around his new home. These are mealworms, and they're known for their ability to eat almost anything. But what if you put 10,000 mealworms on a whole watermelon? How quickly would they completely eat it and turn it to mush despite its massive size?
Yeah, I don't know. So that's why I bought 10,000 mealworms.
Yeah, this is the most nastiest thing I've ever done, but it'll also be one of the most satisfying.
Well, I got the watermelons right here, but I actually first just kind of want to put this piece of bread in here to see how quickly these mealworms will start to devour it.
So yeah, I put the bread inside, and as you could probably imagine, the mealworms wasted no time to start swarming this thing, and of course, they then started to consume it. If you pay attention to right here in specific, you can see how they just devour a massive hole right through the center of the bread. If they're doing this to the tiny piece of bread, imagine what they do to the full watermelon. Anyways, literally after only 4 hours, this bread was hollowed out with mealworms and just had holes all over it. But this is literally nothing compared to the other time lapses I'll be showing off in the video.
Got 5 big leeches.
Yup, leeches usually live in the wild and grab onto unsuspecting prey to basically just suck the blood out of them. Well, since I have 5 of these leeches and they're in captivity, it's gonna allow me to get some insane time-lapse footage of them sucking the life out of a food object as the leeches get bigger. It should be pretty cool. And if you watch my video about keeping pet leeches, you'd know they basically like to spend all their time under the water, so that's why I'll be setting up an aquarium for this test.
And then quickly, I'm just gonna fill up this tank with this so I can go ahead and put the leeches inside so we can get this test started.
So yeah, I put each of these 5 leeches inside and I put a lid on top so they didn't escape. And immediately you can kind of just see how they all just start swimming around under the water, just sort of like how snakes do. Yeah, it's kind of weird honestly, but once they want to stop swimming, they'll go up to the glass and just grab onto it using the end of their bodies basically as a suction cup. It's actually pretty cool. Anyways, for the food I'll be feeding these guys, it's this piece of beef liver.
Well, all right, why don't we just drop this slimy nastiness into here and see how long it takes for these leeches to get absolutely massive.
And so step 1 was to actually get the leeches to bite onto this piece of meat, which is pretty easy. You basically just pick up the piece of meat with tweezers and start bringing it up to the leeches' faces until they grab onto it. So yeah, I just went around and picked up all the leeches onto the meats. But if you couldn't tell, the water quality got super bad because of the beef liver, so I decided to actually let the leeches eat the beef liver out of the water, since in the wild, that's actually how they prefer to feast. And while a couple of the leeches kind of detached from the piece of meat and started to run away, 3 of the leeches actually did stay on it, so I could watch as they started to eat. You can literally see them contract their throats in and out as they basically use their teeth to grind the meat up, and then they suck it up like a smoothie up into their bodies. But things actually did not go to plan, because out of nowhere, this leech decided to detach from the piece of meat, and then he just started to slither away randomly. Then the other 2 leeches decided to detach too, and this guy decided to just burrow into the piece of meat, and this one just slithered away. Hey, at least we got to watch him eat for a little bit, but this is why I love time lapses. You just capture random interesting stuff like this. But even these leeches are nowhere near as
Yes, you heard that right. Flesh-eating beetles. And they're called that because they're beetles that eat flesh. And well, let me show you why that is so cool.
Now, as you can see, there's some actual flesh-eating beetles in here, but most of the things in here are still in their larva stage, which means they're actually even more hungry than usual. And you see, these insects are cool because they can literally just eat the flesh off of animals to the point where they only leave the skeleton bones behind. So yeah, I'm gonna try and record a time lapse of that.
And I've got thousands of flesh-eating beetles in here to the point if I put my finger in there, it would probably turn into a skeleton. Actually, Actually, you know what? I wonder what would happen if I put a piece of dog food in there. Hey, I guess let me get a quick time lapse real quick.
So I put the dog food in, and oh guys, all I'll say is things are about to get interesting with these beetles. But as you could probably imagine, buying all these crazy bugs and worms is extremely expensive, and I've been needing to manage a lot of money, so that's why I'm glad today's sponsor is back to the flesh-eating beetles. And if you were wondering, it didn't take them very long for them to start swarming this piece of dog food. You see, these are dog treats that I buy for my dog Jet, and they're made out of the top quality real beef ingredients, which of course Jet loves, but that also explains why these flesh-eating beetle larvae were also loving it. Anyways, it was pretty crazy how after just a few of these beetles latched onto the dog food, pretty much all of the beetles soon followed behind until literally this piece of dog food was literally like just not a piece of dog food anymore. This is just a living piece of flesh-eating beetle at this point. Yeah, there's just so many on here.
Oh my gosh, bro, what? These guys are so hungry.
So yeah, I shook them all off because if you remember, the main reason I got these beetles is because I actually want to see if they could turn an animal into a skeleton by just eating its flesh. And I don't want them to get filled up on this, but anyways, considering this piece of dog food was only in there for like 10 minutes, the beetles made a pretty decent amount of progress by chewing a bunch of tiny little chunks out of it.
Anyways, for the main course I'm feeding these guys, I've got a duck head. Yeah, and we're gonna see if they can turn it into a white duck skull. But yeah, don't worry guys, I didn't do this to the duck.
I wasted no time to put this into our tank. Let's see what these bugs do. Now, immediately things were pretty interesting because many of the beetles, of course, were drawn to this nasty duck head, and pretty much all of the beetles started to gather at the base of the head. These guys were all slowly chewing away at the fur of this duck head, and it was cool because you could gradually see the group of flesh-eating beetles move up along the side of the duck head, and they were even eating it so much that they ended up knocking it over. Eventually, it was so nasty because the beetles had just completely swarmed the head and were crawling in and out different parts of it, like the hole in the beak. And after leaving this in here for a full 24 hours, you could just see how much they chewed through all the fur and just how nasty this is. But the real damage was done on the bottom of the skull where it was completely chewed through. These are the literal bones of the duck skull, and this is just straight up so disgusting. This looks like a zombie duck head at this point.
Oh my gosh, this smells so bad, you guys don't even know. But dang, check this out. I'm actually kind of surprised this didn't just like turn a completely white skull kind of color, because I know these beetles sometimes do that, but I guess it makes sense. This is just kind of dog food, but I would call it a success. I mean, look at how destroyed this thing is. Anyways, so these guys will definitely make a very interesting addition to my pet collection. Yup, you know how some people set up their ant colonies in 2D ant nests to get footage of them digging out those tunnels along the glass? Well, this alien creature is actually able to do the same exact thing. Let me show you how.
Yeah, so this thing's called a vinegaroon, and it's the same one from a few videos ago on my channel. But you see, I call them an alien because, I mean, just look at them. They look extremely weird, and they have these claws at the front of their body that actually allow them to dig.
Yep, and for this guy, as you can see, I filled this tank up with a bunch of clay. But if you look, I actually left a hole on the side of the glass empty. That way, when I go and fill this place up with dirt, the vinegaroon won't be able to make a hole anywhere in this dirt other than that hole I made in the clay right on the side of the glass there.
Now, anyways, after getting the dirt in, I wasted no time to put the vinegaroon inside. Now, immediately, this alien creature wasn't exactly super interested in digging. He was kind of just trying to climb out. But you see, that's because there's actually a few things I have to set up in here to make this guy want to dig quickly. First of all, I put this water dish in here, and then I started to use my finger to dig out a little tunnel under the water dish. Now, when the vinegaroon comes over here, he'll find the little entrance to the burrow I made, and when he's ready to dig, he'll know where to start. So guys, I just went and set up my time-lapse camera in another room so we could observe what these creatures do when no one's watching. And yeah, during the first few hours, since it was technically still day, you can see he was very active amongst the top section, still trying to escape. But the second it hit nighttime, this dude went down to the burrow section, and he started to dig up like a straight up drill. Nah, let's see that on an instant replay. That's actually pretty cool. You can literally see the pile of dirt up here grow as the vinegaroon digs out all the dirt from the tunnel. I think this is some of the clearest footage ever caught of these creatures digging. It's pretty cool to watch.
Well, dang, now that this guy dug this tunnel, you're probably wondering why they actually make these tunnels. Well, they actually make them to hunt. And well, I got a cricket right in here. Let's drop this thing in.
And so after I dropped the cricket in, he started to walk around the top area, but little did he know the vinegaroon was right under his feet, waiting in the burrow for food to walk in. And a little bit later, the cricket did just that. He started squeezing through the opening that was dug out the night before, and he went in deep enough to where the vinegaroon was sitting. I know it got super foggy in here when I brought it to my recording area, so it's kind of hard to see, but the vinegaroon started to attack the cricket, and he started to chase him out the burrow. The cricket tried to escape, but it was no use because the claws of the vinegaroon are just too strong. And I know you guys can't really see it well in this footage, but I can assure you the cricket is no longer with us, to put it lightly. Dang, that was cool. But
I'm not gonna waste any time, and I'm gonna record some stuff right away. But before we do the watermelon, I actually want to start with something a lot more interesting. This thing.
yeah, this is literally a piece of styrofoam. And you're probably wondering right now, what the heck, Terra Green, why are you feeding this to the worms? Well, it's because mealworms have an absolutely insane special ability, and it's actually that they can somehow digest styrofoam. Yeah, talk about the latest special ability ever, but I just had to get a time up showing this off, and immediately these dudes started to completely climb all over the styrofoam, completely covering it. I don't know why mealworms are one of the only animals that can eat styrofoam. It's honestly kind of weird, and the craziest part about this time lapse is if you look right down here, you can literally see the moment when the mealworms decided to start chewing a massive hole through the side of the styrofoam, so they could literally crawl inside to eat more. It's super cool. And anyways, after leaving the styrofoam in here all night, I shook off all the mealworms so we could see the damage that was done, and holy, look at this thing. First of all, that hole the mealworms shoot through the side is nasty, and it's still filled to the brim with worms. Ugh. Then just this whole top part has bite marks all over it, and this thing is probably hollowed out and just filled with worms. Nah. And yeah, if you're wondering about the other pieces of styrofoam, basically the exact same thing happened to them, and they got obliterated. It's safe to say these mealworms are hungry.
Now, I think it's about time we get out the watermelon so we can do the final time lapse, and I got a knife here so I can go and cut this thing up so we can reveal the nice juicy red part.
So yeah, that's exactly what I did, and I just put the watermelon straight into this tank so we could get this test started right away. Now, you already know the mealworms started to, of course, climb all over the watermelons right away. Mealworms love watermelons because, of course, they're super sugary and sweet, but they're also made out of 92% water, meaning the mealworms can just get super hydrated. Now, it's so crazy because you can see how nice and bright red this watermelon is now. Well, it only took a couple hours until that bright red completely started to fade as thousands of mealworms started to climb all over the watermelon, nibbling tiny little pieces out of it. And yeah, this all happened in the time span of only 12 hours. Yeah, I literally just left this overnight.
Okay, I just checked on this for the first time since waking up, and first of all, this smells absolutely disgusting. But look at this. This was a bright red color like 10 hours ago, but it's like completely rotting because of what these mealworms are doing to it. This is nasty, and they're making all these tiny little holes in it. Nah.
Anyways, I moved the tank to the floor to continue the rest of the time lapse. But as you can see in this footage, as I continued recording, the mealworms weren't nearly as interested in the watermelon. Pretty much none of them were even eating it anymore. I mean, it does look pretty rotten, to be honest, so I guess it would make sense to why they don't want to eat it. But yeah, I decided to just stop the time lapse since they weren't eating it anymore, and I came back 24 hours later so I could see the full results of what the watermelon looked like.
What the heck? This is so nasty. Is that mold growing on the watermelons? Oh my gosh.
But actually, to my surprise, when I took a look under the watermelons, there was massive holes chewed through the green shell part. And like this watermelon here had so much chewed through this part. So yeah, I guess the mealworms really were eating the watermelon, but I guess it just wasn't showing up on the time lapse because it was happening under where we could see it. Dang, that's actually insane that they could eat so much.
Anyways, hopefully you guys learned something new or were entertained by the time lapses I showed you in this video. And about these 10,000 mealworms, well, I'm gonna have to see if I can get these donated to a pet shop.
So this is the perfect time to test out some foods with him to see which he likes the most. And first up, I want to test just some normal fish food. Yeah, I don't know if he's actually going to eat it. It's fish food, it's not axolotl food, but let's try it out.
So I dropped them in and let them sit for a little while, but yeah, he didn't really eat them, and he didn't even come out to take a look at them. A little later, the axolotl left the cave, so I got out the second food, bloodworms.
But these are frozen bloodworms, so to make them, not frozen anymore, just kind of plop the packet in a little cup of water like that. And we can go and just take this big chunk and put it in right next to the axolotl.
And it didn't take long until he noticed it and instantly took a snap at it, eating the whole pile up.
And oh my gosh, he just ate that whole thing. Oh, dang, he's hungry.
Anyways, I got the third and final food source out, night crawlers.
Which are just worms, basically, but they're giant worms compared to those tiny little blood worms. Okay, here we go. We got a nice little tiny piece of worm, and we're just gonna drop it in right next to the axolotl.
And after wiggling it around in front of him, he picked up the scent, and as you can expect, yep, he started going crazy, eating this worm up too.
He's absolutely just devouring this, just shaking it up. He's not letting this thing get away. That's a good axolotl. Oh my gosh.
This is the world's largest beetle, and this is my finger. And in this video, I'll be putting to the test how strong these beetles really are. And I'll also be showing you the craziest centipede species, insane alien-looking bugs, and so many other cool insects, starting with an assassin bug.
Assassin bugs. That sounds deadly. It's because they kind of are, kind of cool. Let me show you.
So I let these assassin bugs loose into a little enclosure I built for them, and now you can get a clear look at them. What makes these creatures so cool is if you look here, they have this super weird sharp piece. Now this is called a rostrum. And using it, they can pierce into their prey, inject a special kind of digestive venom into the prey, then using the rostrum, they slurp the insides of the prey up like a smoothie. It's insane stuff. And as you can see, I have multiple of these guys because I got a species that are able to live and hunt together.
You probably see why they're called assassin bugs. So let's feed them a cricket and document.
Now I knew this wasn't going to last long because assassin bugs are some of the best hunters. And I was right. Immediately, this cricket happened to climb up the very piece of bark that all the assassin bugs were hiding. And one of them was on the lookout and instantly spotted the cricket. Now it was time to hunt. Like real assassins who move stealthily, assassin bugs do the same. And this guy extremely slowly inched towards his target, and as the gap closed, the assassin awaited the perfect opportunity to pounce onto the cricket, was now in the grasp of the assassin. Right away, you can see the rostrum, the cricket. The inside of this cricket is now being juicy for this assassin bug to slurp up. Yep, sounds yummy.
All right, let me get this lid on. I don't want these guys biting me in my sleep or anything. I finally got one, even though they're all extremely venomous. But oh boy, let me show you this guy.
Yeah, I didn't get a small one.
I finally got one, even though they're all extremely venomous. But oh boy, let me show you this guy.
Yeah, I didn't get a small one either. I got one of the these guys are pretty evil because right away he started to try and climb the sides of the container to, and as you can tell, these guys are pretty evil because right away he started to try and climb the sides of the container to escape, which I definitely these guys usually live in desert environments, so we're gonna use a bit of sand for this enclosure, but also a solid mix of dirt and other natural stuff because it's actually what gives them the best conditions in their enclosure. Then we want to give this guy some nice natural stuff to hide under, and finally a couple skulls in here to signify how deadly these guys are to other insects.
All right, let's get this centipede in the enclosure. I get to show you guys how insane of a pet they are. Let me get him in this enclosure.
Now these guys usually live in desert environments, so we're going to use a bit of sand for this enclosure, but also a solid mix of dirt and other natural stuff because it's actually what gives them. Anyways, this dude immediately got walked. Then we want to give this guy some nice natural stuff to hide under, and finally a couple skulls in here. They're called how deadly these guys are means 100, and they basically got like 100 legs. But not exactly 100, because I actually did count how many legs this guy had, and it was only 40. So yeah, their name is a lie, it's not 100, but I mean, it's still a lot.
It's so cool to watch these guys walk around, but it's even cooler to watch them eat. So you already know. I got it.
Anyways, this dude immediately got to walking around his enclosure, and what makes these guys so cool is obviously how many legs I dropped the cricket directly next to the centipede's face, but thankfully for the cricket, the centipede was distracted, and so the cricket not exactly 100 past his face, and kind of just walked this guy had, and it was and then he kind of just started to write it like a train. Not 100, but you gotta be careful because this train
is so cool to watch these guys walk around, but it's even cooler to watch them.
And I was correct because only 30 seconds later, the centipede once again came across the cricket, and this time things immediately were interesting. So I dropped the cricket directly in the direction the cricket face. So I also followed the centipede with my camera, and that's when I saw the two straight past his face. And this time the centipede made his attack, and then he kind of tried to ride it like a train. As I looked around, you gotta be careful because this train as well is definitely about to eat you because he was now in the grass. This is only 30 seconds later. The centipede once again came across the cricket. Good job, and this time, even though you are a little bit creepy, it's actually the centipede started to follow in the direction the cricket ran. And so I also followed the centipede with my camera, and that's when I saw the two met
legs
And
crawling
this
on
time,
my
the centipede
hand
made
is
his
just so
attack.
weird. I
The
don't even
cricket
know
tried to
how to
escape through the
describe it.
logs,
But if I had to, I would just say it's a very tickly.
Pretty
As
clear
you can
the
see,
cricket
each one of the
wasn't able
legs
to
on the
escape.
millipede
He was now
is
in the
almost
grasp
of
of
this
this shark,
insane
which lets it
apex
get a
predator
really good
of the
grip
desert
with
and
what
was
it's
getting
standing
munched
on.
up.
But yeah,
Good job,
it's just such a
centipede.
weird
Even though you are a
feeling.
little bit
I didn't
creepy,
get
it's
some
actually
lame
super
millipede
cool
for
to
this
watch.
video. I balled out and got the most massivest millipede of all time, called a giant African millipede. Which yeah, isn't really a very creative name. They just kind of said it's giant, where it's from, and that it's a millipede. But yeah, I'm not gonna complain. I guess it's easy to remember.
Now, there's just one problem because the place I bought this from specifically said in the description, do not use cocoa fiber. Now, if you didn't know, cocoa fiber is basically like the holy grail of dirt for terrarium builders. It's just like a special kind of dirt that holds humidity very well, I guess. But yeah, it's like unheard of to not use this. Oh my gosh, the sensation of like these, oh my gosh, the sensation of like these
Since cocoa fiber was all I had, I drove to the greatest store of all time. If I had to, I would just say it's a very. I would just say it's a very. Each one of the legs on the millipede. Each one of the legs on the millipede is a really good grip, which lets it get standing on. It's just such standing on. It's just such a weird
which I'll show you very soon.
So when I got back home, I started mixing together all my new dirt materials. All these materials I chose are specifically designed to hold just as much moisture as the cocoa fiber, if not more, which as you can see, makes this super duper moisty.
All right, it's perfect that it's now super wet because if it was too dry, the millipede would not survive very long. They dry out super easily. So yeah, I'll have to spray this thing a lot to make sure it's always nice and moist.
But since we have to keep this so wet, mold might actually grow on the sides of the enclosure. That's where my secret ingredient comes in.
I got springtails. Now, if you've seen my other videos, you probably don't think it's that cool, but bruh, I mean, I still think they're cool, okay? Be free, boys.
Yeah, springtails are just these super tiny white bugs that will go around and clean up mold if it grows. So yeah, they're perfect. Finally, I just put in some tiny bits of cork bark around to decorate the place and add some cover.
There we go. This is a fantastical millipede enclosure. Let's go ahead and get this guy inside.
You see, I didn't just get some lame millipede. You see, I didn't just get some lame millipede. Anyways, after he felt a giant enough, he uncurled up a giant. Really a very creative name. Isn't really a giant name. It's not really much to talk about where it's from. And I guess walk around. Yeah, I'm not gonna complain. I guess the main thing that is cool and also similar to centipedes is the crazy amount of legs in the description. An average millipede has way more legs than a centipede. As you can see, very nice. Yeah, I got just wandered around the enclosure for like 30 minutes. Eventually, once you feel very well, I guess, it's like unheard of, I guess. It's like unheard of. And he'll basically just chill there for like 90% of his life. So since cocoa fiber was all I had, I drove to the greatest store of all time. I drove to the greatest store of all time. Walmart. There, I got a special kind of dirt that is not cocoa fiber. Dirt that is not cocoa fiber. I also got some wood chips. And the reason I say that is like wood chips and a bit of straight up has the body and claws of a scorpion. So when I got back home, I started mixing together all my home. I started mixing together all my materials I chose are specific. All these materials I chose are specific to cocoa fiber. If not more, cocoa fiber. If not more, which as you can see,
and if we separate the perfect that is now super wet, or if it was too dry, the millipede
I don't know what
is not too dry. The millipede
to be honest, the trees that has some vinegar in its name is poison. This creature has the ability to keep this so wet. Mold might actually grow wet. Mold might actually grow vinegar out of the straight. That's all over the
I got springtails. I got springtails. Now, if you've seen my other videos, you probably showing you guys exactly what that looks like. Let's go ahead and
springtails are just these super tiny white bugs. Are just these round tiny white bugs that will go around. Thankfully, hypermoscope. Finally, I just put in some bits of. But yeah, finally, about 1/3 of the way up. And then I
there we go. This is a fantastic millipede enclosure. Fantastic
greenery enclosure.
Let's go ahead and moss and spread.
I love this stuff because while it might look pretty dry right now, all it needs is a. Anyways, after he felt comfortable enough, and he uncurled as long as all and got to now. There's not really much to talk about with these guys. There's not really much to talk about with these guys who like it. Don't they kind of just jealous around? The main thing that makes them cool and also the main thing that makes centipedes and also is similar to centipedes is the average millipede has a way more legs. Millipede has a way more legs than a centipede. I got to wander around the enclosure. Yeah, I got to wander around the enclosure for like 30 minutes. But eventually his burrows to the floor, he'll drop the water to the floor, and he'll basically just chill there for like 90 and he'll basically chill there for like 90
percent of his life. Let me get a water dish. That guy was thirsty. He instantly went and tried to get some water, so I'm just gonna go put that one nice in the corner.
So yeah, I filled that up with a bit of water.
This is the closest thing to a
and you want to make sure the water dishes are very shallow.
And it's extremely cool. I'll show you why.
After a water dish was too deep, they might fall in and drown. And the reason I say that, but anyways, my guy was having a lot of fun It straight up has the body and
Alright, now I want to check out if this guy's going to try and eat. Maybe he'll even shoot his acid, I don't know, but they are nocturnal, so yeah, I mean, he might not even eat at all. But you already know, I got probably the weirdest thing about this creature is in its name, because it's called a vinegaroon, and if you separate the words in there, there's vinegar
some action
and
could theoretically. I don't know what the part of its name means, to be honest, but the reason it has vinegar in its name is you probably know that they has the ability when not eat during the day. Yeah, they'd rather let shoot a special right next to their mouth instead of eating them to spray all over this vinegaroon. It was a different story. So right after a minute of the cricket standing next to him, I know,
and I'll be showing you guys exactly what that looks like. Let's get him in his enclosure so we can show it off.
That means this vinegaroon was now the build is pretty simple. And the next time the thankfully I noticed the vinegaroon used his little antenna to locate the location of the way out of the cricket, and then I stepped over pieces of wood and but unfortunately this time I wanted to add some greenery, so I tore a bit later I noticed that the vinegaroon had found a little water dish. While it might look pretty dry right now, all it needs is a nice little spray bath. And I guess he was getting a bit more. This stuff will just grow but the cricket was directly as long as I keep this enclosure. And when the two creatures got a little bit closer, the vinegaroon once again struck and missed, but this time he was not going to give up and chased the cricket down to finally get a hold of it, all while splashing around in the water. And yeah, immediately after Bro now had it inside, he ran straight up to the glass to get a nice little drink of water, started devouring it. Good catch, bro. I was using his claws to shovel the drops of water.
Unfortunately, he didn't use his acid or vinegar spray thing, and that's because I think they only use that for defense. And obviously, I don't want to stress this guy out. So I'm not going to force him to do it, but I will show you guys this very cool footage of them doing it. Watch this.
So basically, like I was saying earlier, they arched their abdomen up, aim their tail up too, and boom, the vinegar sprays out super smart. After water dish was spray out, and it also has absolutely insane aim. But anyways, my guy was having a lot of fun exploring around his new tweezers that was holding it.
Now I want to check out if this guy's going to try and eat. Maybe he'll even shoot his acid, I don't know, but they are nocturnal, so yeah, I mean, he might not even eat at all. But you already know, I got a little cricket. Crickets led me, obviously.
I have the largest beetle species in I dropped a cricket directly next to this one with some action could theoretically happen, and this one that's pretty tiny. My other videos with nocturnal animals
now I'll be starting with the smallest beetle and testing the weakest objects in this guy's mouth. As the beetles get bigger, the objects will get right next to their mouth. Until at the end, I'm going to be putting my finger in this guy's mouth.
It was a different story because right after a minute of the cricket standing next to him, I noticed he actually started. This is called a rainbow cricket. Well, it's the smallest beetle I have. That means this vinegaroon was in hunting mode. If you look very closely, it came by. I noticed the vinegaroon uses little antenna to locate the location like this. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And I already built this guy a little enclosure. Unfortunately, he also, even though this place is pretty small, however, a bit later, I like it. The vinegaroon had found a little water dish I put in there for.
Now, the first object I'm going to test with this guy is a little
and I guess he was getting a bit more of a drink
technically, we don't test their strength, but I just want to show you how they eat. It's actually pretty interesting.
And when the two creatures got a little bit closer, because while they got their mandibles once again, this is actually not, but this time their mouth is actually under the mandibles right down to finally get a hold of it. The reason they have mandibles is so in the wild, the males can fight each other, and whoever wins the fight gets to go cricket in his grasp. And yeah, he just started devouring it to jelly right in front of this guy. And these guys love sweet stuff like jelly or fruit. And in fact, I think this jelly is banana flavored, which is one of the beetle's favorite foods. So I thought this dude was just going to start devouring it up right away. But in fact, he seemed kind of defensive and actually started attacking. Basically, like I was saying earlier, they after really kind of started to shove it in his face too, he got a little taste of it, and then he seemed very happy. Pretty cool to see it spray out, and it also has it, and it's actually very cool to see how like here the vinegaroon was able to really just suck on and hit the juicers that was holding it.
So basically, let's close this for now, and let's actually go and get out our second beetle, which is this guy. And he has
I put a lid on this enclosure, and this is called a giraffe stag beetle. So yeah, this is also a stag beetle like the one before, but a slightly different version with these way larger mandibles that if you actually look at them are also way sharper. I have the largest beetle species in the world. Way stronger. But I also have this one with, and of course, I already got sharp mandibles, and this one that's pretty tiny. But
now for the object for this guy to crush, I'll be starting with the smallest beetle and testing the weakest objects in this guy's mouth. As the beetles get bigger, the objects
so I didn't waste any time, and I just went
at the end. I'm going to be putting my finger in this guy's mouth.
And he sort of started to close his mandibles on it, but I'm not gonna lie, it was a kind of lackluster effort. I even tried putting it in at different angles to see if he could actually crush it, but yeah, he wasn't really doing a good job. So I decided to give him an easier object to crush, a paper towel. There's not that many animals that have a purple color like this, so yeah, it's pretty cool. And I already built this guy yet again, even after putting it right at the super sharp, pretty small. That's exactly how they like it, because much of just chill around all day.
Bruh, nah, these beetles got the most intimidating mandibles, a little pack of jelly. Technically, you can't even bite through cardboard or even a paper towel.
Now, beetles like this are
what are these
cool,
mandibles
well, they
for?
got
You can't
their
even bite through
mandibles
this
here.
stuff.
This is
These are
actually
actually
not
insane
their
creatures. They're
mouth. Their
super
mouth
cool.
is
Let me get this
actually
guy back
under the
in
mandibles
enclosure.
right
Anyways,
here.
what I'm
So,
really
that's
excited
where
about
they
is
eat. The
testing
reason they have
this
mandibles is
bad
so in the
boy's
wild,
bite.
the males can
I'm
fight
not
each
actually
other,
that
and
excited.
whoever wins
I
the
do gotta put my
fight gets to
finger
go
in here,
home
but
with the female beetle. Pretty
let's just
interesting.
do
But
this.
anyways, I went and finally time for the craziest and also largest beetle stuff like jelly or fruit. I think this jelly is banana flavored, which is one of the beetle's favorite foods. So I thought this dude was just gonna start devouring it up right away, but in fact he seemed kind of defensive and actually started attacking it with his mandibles. Yeah, these guys live in the South American rainforest, and unlike other beetles in this video, they literally have fur on them. Because he actually, that's how you know they're exotic. And it's actually not even mentioning they have these absolutely really just sucked all the juiciness out of what?
So
the mandibles
let's
are
close this
basically
for now,
like
and let's actually go and get out. And I got a pretty solid sized enclosure for this guy, but I'll once again be doing this test outside the tank since
this is called a giraffe. Before I put my finger in the mandibles, I first got something very close to a finger, but a slightly different version with these way larger.
Yeah, I got a carrot because you know whenever I see videos of people like testing their fingers and stuff like car door windows or something, they always use a carrot first as like a good representation of what it's like before a finger. Imagine he just chops. All right, now for the object for this guy to crush, I've got a little piece of cardboard. Oh, also I'm gonna take the beetle out of the
anyways, I went and put the carrot in the mandibles without I didn't waste any time, and I just went and put this piece of cardboard. I was kind of expecting this to rip through the carrot, mandibles on it, but I'm not gonna lie, it was a kind of lackluster effort. I even tried putting it in at different angles to see if he could actually crush it, but yeah, he wasn't really doing a good job. So I decided to give him an easier object to crush, a paper towel. Surely he could at least make a hole through this with his insanely sharp mandibles. But yet again, even I'm gonna be completely honest, this basically felt like yeah, he didn't really make much of it.
It's a little bit of a pinch, but it is not these beetles. You might be thinking, intimidating mandibles. This thing is so weak, and well, I actually kind of knew it was going to be that cardboard or even a paper towel, bro. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. What are these mandibles for? You can't even bite through this stuff. No, I'm just kidding. No, these are actually insane creatures. They're super cool. Let me get this guy back in his enclosure. Anyways, what I'm really excited about is testing this bad boy's bite. Well, I mean, I'm not actually that excited. I do gotta put my finger in here, but let's just do this.
Yep, it's finally time for the craziest and also largest beetle in the world. A Hercules beetle.
You guys have no idea how hard it was for me to get my hands on one of these. They were out of stock everywhere, and I had to message so many people, but I finally did. It was super expensive, but it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, these guys live in the South American rainforests, and unlike other beetles in this video, they literally have fur on them. Yeah, that's how you know they're exotic. But that's not even mentioning they have these absolutely bonkers mandibles. Cause of what? The mandibles are basically like double the size of the body.
And I got a pretty solid sized enclosure for this guy, but I'll once again be doing this test outside the tank since they're so massive.
Now, before I put my finger in the mandibles, I first got something very close to a finger to find out the real damage I was about to face.
Yeah, I got a carrot, because you know, whenever I see videos of people like testing their fingers and stuff like car door windows or something, they always use a carrot first as like a good representation of what it's like before a finger. Bro, imagine he just chops clean through this carrot, and then I'm gonna have to put my finger in right after that. Jeez.
Anyways, I went and put the carrot in the mandibles without wasting any time. And guys, to be honest, I was kind of expecting this to rip through the carrot because they just look vicious. But after moving the carrot over tons of different parts of the mandibles, the most the beetle did was give a very light pinch to the carrot. And yeah, all it took was a bit of wiggling. I just put my finger in, found the perfect position to get pinched in the best way, and then the beetle started to close his horn mandibles down a bit. But I'm gonna be completely honest, this basically felt like nothing.
I mean, yeah, it's a little bit of a pinch, but it is not bad at all. Now you might be thinking, bruh, terrarium, what was that? This thing is so weak, and well, I actually kind of knew it was gonna be that weak, I'm not gonna lie.
You see, this is 50 Venus flytrap plants, and in this video, I'm gonna put 1,000 flies in the same container as them. them? Will the sheer number of flies trick the traps, causing them to close, or are the flies just simply cooked?
Yeah, I don't know, but that's why I bought this.
This is 1,000 fly larvae. Yeah, might look extremely nasty, but over the next week, as long as I feed them food, they should all turn into flies so I can do this test.
So while we wait for these guys to turn into flies, obviously I have all of these Venus flytraps, but I also have tons of other carnivorous plants that you may have never even seen before, meaning I'm gonna be able to do tons of different tests in this video. It's gonna be super cool.
And for test number 1, I wanna show you guys the smallest Venus flytraps.
Now, I know it may sound stupid, but I promise you how they work and catch insects is actually really insane. Let me show you how they work.
And yeah, it's not a joke how small these things are, because when compared to normal Venus flytraps, the jaws are about 10 times smaller. And in fact, they're kind of cute, to be honest.
But since these are minuscule, the normal prey I feed in my videos is not gonna cut it. Yeah, sorry cricket, you get to live another day. That's why instead, I got literally the smallest thing available.
These are flightless fruit flies, which if you've seen my channel before, you know they're pretty much the most useless animal. Cause seriously, bro, how are you a fly that doesn't have the ability to fly? That doesn't make any sense. But anyways, I put the smallest Venus flytraps in the testing enclosure, then I put one of these flies inside to see if he'd get caught. Start the timer. Now this fly didn't waste any time, because it immediately walked straight up to one of the Venus flytrap pots and then started to walk all over the tops of the jaws, absolutely risking his life. You may already know this, but normal Venus flytraps work by having these super tiny trigger hairs inside of them that when a bug or something touches them, it snaps shut. But these traps are obviously the smallest in the world. Because of that, they have extremely small trigger hairs. And I'm talking so small that if I zoom in like 100x on this footage, they're so thin, my camera can't even pick them up. And I guess the trigger hairs were quite literally so thin that every time this flightless fruit fly walked inside the jaw of a trap, the jaw didn't close at all, and the fly was able to just walk out. I mean, it kind of makes sense. These flightless fruit flies weigh about 0.0003 grams. So yeah, I guess the traps quite literally can't even be triggered by how light their weight is.
Yeah, clearly the fruit flies aren't gonna work. So instead, I got the world's smallest cricket instead to test. Let's see if this works any better.
And oh boy, let me just tell you, things were a lot more interesting this time around. Because once again, the cricket walked straight up to one of the trap pots and started climbing all over the tops once again. But this time, quite literally within 30 seconds, the cricket happened to put his face up to the lip of one of the Venus flytraps. You may also already know this, but these plants produce a special kind of nectar around the lips of their jaws to lure insects in like this cricket. And you can see it was working pretty well, because this cricket was just absolutely slurping this nectar up. But he was getting a bit too distracted, because he then stepped into the trap, probably stepping on the micro trigger hairs, which then caused the jaws of it to close. But the cricket was too fast, and he was barely able to make it out with his life. Dang, that was a close call, but you can see how quickly that can all happen. And yeah, don't worry guys, because there's only a few minutes later when the cricket did the same exact thing. He walked up to another jaw, walked straight into it, and yeah, this time the trap closed on him while he was starting to walk out, leaving half of his body now sticking out of the trap. Even though these are the smallest Venus flytraps in the world, they trap insects nearly just as well as the fully grown ones. It's pretty interesting. And yeah, while I wait for those 1,000 flies to hatch so we can do the final test, in the meantime, I want to show you some other insane carnivorous plants that you may have never seen before, with the second one being sundews.
Yep, everyone knows what Venus flytraps are, but not everyone knows what a sundew is, but they're actually pretty cool. Let me show you what they do.
So obviously, like flytraps, sundews are also a carnivorous plant, except instead of having jaws, it has these long stems with these little red hairs on the top of them. But on each of these little red hairs is a special kind of sticky glue it produces that will make it so when a fly or any other insect touches it, it gets permanently stuck because of how sticky it is.
And when an insect gets stuck on here, the trap does something insane to be able to consume the insect, which I'll show you very soon when it obviously traps an insect.
So yeah, I got multiple of these sundew plants, and I even got this slightly different kind of sundew called an octopus plant. That will be cool to see if this can catch any insects as well. So let's get these in the testing chamber.
And for this, I think I'll be using a cricket once again, because they're literally perfect. They can just climb up the side of the stems and yeah, just get stuck. This should be fun to watch. Let's put this dude inside.
So yeah, once again, I just started with one of these guys, but if this guy gets caught fast, I'll be adding way more inside of here. Anyways, so this cricket for the first minute kind of just wandered around the walls of the enclosure, but it wasn't long until he started heading towards the sundews. Now you see the sticky glue glue that this plant produces is actually a type of nectar, which smells and tastes great to the insects. So yeah, just like how Venus flytraps lure insects in with their nectar, these traps do the same thing, because this cricket then decided to start climbing up the stem. The only thing is though that he ended up stopping right before the sticky part, and that's actually because of his antenna. You see, crickets have these pretty long antennas that help them navigate and detect danger before running into it, and this guy's antenna actually ended up getting stuck in the sticky nectar part. But using its mouth, it was able to pull the antenna back and then started to lick all the nectar off of it. Yeah, and I'm not kidding, this cricket really just sat here for like 30 minutes, constantly licking his antenna, then putting it back into the sticky nectar, and then licking it back up. He was kind of outsmarting this carnivorous plant and just getting its nectar for free. So I'm not gonna lie, I just tried to push him towards it with my tweezers since he clearly wasn't gonna do it on his own, and yeah, he just kind of ended up falling off.
Yo, what the heck? I was just trying to record that cricket and I just realized there's a jumping spider in here. Do you see that? It's on the little octopus plant. Is it stuck?
Yeah, this jumping spider just happened to wander into this enclosure by accident. I guess he was just living somewhere in my house. But since he was here, I figured I'd just watch him to see if he would get caught by the traps. And pretty quickly, he started to climb the stems of the trap and got up to the sticky part. But yeah, he was kind of too smart for this trap too and turned around the second he realized it was sticky. But it was pretty cool to watch this guy just jump around the plants. However, he never really ended up getting trapped and he ended up just climbing out of the enclosure.
All right, guys, I'm not gonna lie. This cricket, I've been trying to record him getting eaten for like 2 hours now. And every time right before going on the sticky part, he just stops and cleans his antenna. And yeah, he just turns around and never actually goes on the sticky part. He's too smart for this. So yeah, let me take this guy out.
Instead, I actually just got out the flightless fruit flies again, because apparently this is actually Sundu's favorite insect. And yeah, I just dumped a few on the sand, and it wasn't long until some of them started to climb all over the stems and eventually started getting stuck all over the different sticky parts. I even went and just dumped a crazy amount of these flies all over the top of the Sundew plants to show you guys exactly how cool Sundews really are. Because obviously, now you can see the sticky parts of the plants are just completely covered in flightless fruit flies. Now, if you're wondering how this plant actually eats the flies, well, this footage shows how. As you can see, it uses each of its red hairs to basically curl around the prey. And once all of those curl around it, the stem itself also starts to curl around the prey. This will basically ensure the fly has a 0% chance of escaping, while the plant releases basically an acid to consume it. Yeah, it's pretty brutal.
So yeah, it's pretty cool to see these things work. All these flies are just gonna turn into food for these plants very soon.
Alright, there's still one more major carnivorous plant type that I haven't shown yet. They're called pitcher plants.
Yep, this plant can also eat insects. And actually how it does it is probably the most brutal out of all of them. Let me show you.
Yep, like I said, these are called pitcher plants. And similar to the last plant, they have pretty long stems that go up. But the difference is this time at the top, there's this little trapdoor leaf thing that if you look is actually covering a hole that leads directly down to a pit of acid at the bottom of the stem. Yep, these traps have this little hole here that's lined with a super slippery nectar on the inside. So whenever an insect walks inside, they'll slip into the acid at the bottom, and yeah.
And what's really cool is if you actually look inside of this pitcher plant, since it's kind of small and shallow, you can actually see the pool of acid at the bottom. And it actually looks like there's a couple little flies and stuff in there, which it looks like it's actually already dissolving. So yeah, it'd be cool to see some crickets or something following these. Let's test it out.
I didn't even need to use an enclosure this time because I knew this was going to be an extremely fast test. Because immediately after placing the cricket on this first pitcher plant, it started to climb along the sides of the red pitcher. As you can see, the inside of the plant is lined with these downward pointing hairs. This is to make it even more slippery and hard to escape. And yeah, it's kind of funny to see how fast this all happens, but the next time the cricket went to the opening of this plant, it straight up just slipped in right away. Nah, this dude had no clue this plant has evolved over millions of years to just be able to eat them this fast. Yeah, and as you can see on this footage that I recorded on my phone, he was now just sitting at the bottom of this pool of acid. Over the next few days, it'll dissolve him and turn him into nutrients for this plant to grow even stronger and larger. Nice.
And yeah, that's really all there is to these pitcher plants. They're not really the most interesting thing ever. But I actually have some great news, guys, because if you look in this container, you can see many of my flies are starting to hatch.
And that means we can finally start doing some massive scale Venus flytrap tests and eventually test as many flies as I can against all of my Venus flytraps to see who wins. Let's start very simple though with 5 Venus flytraps versus a single fly. And let's see if this fly can get trapped in under a minute. Now I know you may be thinking, bruh, Terra Green, I don't care care about one fly. This is boring. Well, don't worry, because this literally only lasted like 20 seconds. Because immediately this fly started to crawl up the side of a pot, and of course he made his way immediately into a jaw, triggered one of the hairs, and it closed directly onto him. Yup, flies are basically the one thing Venus flytraps are the best at catching. I mean, they're called Venus flytraps for a reason.
Anyways, I got the tank where the final test will be taking place, right here, obviously.
And I didn't waste any time. I just got out the flies that I've been hatching, and I put them straight into this enclosure so we could get this final test started. Quickly, I removed the lid and started the timer. Let the test begin. Now, immediately, a couple of the flies started to fly out of the container, and others started to walk out of the sides. Now, there was something weird though, because while the container had a decent amount of movement in it, only like 10 of the flies were actually leaving the container over the 4-hour time lapse here. Yeah, basically all the flies were staying in there. So I decided to just take the paper towel out that they were all on and tried to just shake off as many as I could onto the Venus flytraps. And obviously, this meant that a few of the flies were now scattered all over the traps and were actually starting to get trapped. But most of them were just being super inactive, barely moving, and not flying. I guess because they were just newly hatched flies and it takes a while for them to become normal.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, guys, this is kind of a fail. Basically, none of the flies are flying around, and I don't think I'm gonna be able to finish this.
But don't worry, because my YouTube friend Flytrap Films recorded a test with an insane amount of flies super similar to this, and he wanted me to show you it. In it, you can see he has a Venus flytrap plant out, and also a bunch of rotten meat in order to attract the flies. Yeah, and it worked really well, because instantly tons of flies started to gather around this plant, and you guessed it, started to get trapped. I mean, when you have this many flies, it's a given that tons are just gonna get trapped right away. And what's so crazy is that sometimes so many would gather on some of the jaws before they close, causing up to 6 flies to get trapped in the same jaw at the same time. What? Flytrap Films himself said that this is the most flies he's ever seen get caught at once. Also, some bonus footage for you guys. Hey, you remember those pitcher plants from earlier? Flytrap Films also did the same test with a massive pitcher plant to show you guys how effective these things are at catching flying insects. And this plant literally just looks like a vacuum cleaner sucking up all the flies, which in a way it kind of is, because every time a flying insect flaps its wings above the opening in this plant, it creates a weird kind of vacuum effect with the wind, causing the bug to actually get pulled down into it. And yup, after not too much time, this thing just caught so many flies, and it was literally just starting to overflow. That is probably the craziest performance from a carnivorous plant that I have ever seen. Thank you, Flytrap Films, for letting me show you this footage.